Hi guys, welcome back to the Social Tune and a brand new episode of Record Roundup. So this will be the final episode before the year-end best and worst lists. After that, we'll have one more final Record Roundup extravaganza where I'll be reviewing about 40 or so albums, and while I have already filmed it, I haven't completed the editing yet, so if there are any more albums that you'd like me to check out before the year's end, please post them in the comments and I will try to add them onto that video at some point before posting it. And otherwise, if they don't end up in that video, then I'll just reply to you in the comments down below. But enough explaining. Let's get into today's records.
Every time you walk out the list, I love you. Baby, we don't stand a chance. It's sad, but it's true. I'm way too good at goodbye. I'm way too good at goodbye.
I have a weird relationship with Sam Smith. Basically, I find him very overrated in the mainstream, given credit for class that he doesn't really show in his lyrics. With a falsetto that is good, but nothing mind-blowing like Usher or Bruno or even Sampha. And his last album reflected not only that, but also that he could be fairly immature and petty. I mean, yeah, I loved I'm Not the Only One, and I didn't even hate the regularly thrashed Money on My Mind. No, my real issue came on the blatant Leave Your Lover, which almost reached Treat You Better levels of awfulness and was about as whiny. Still, his new top 10 single, Too Good at Goodbyes, is easily one of his best songs to date. So I went into this with some hope that it would be good. And it's really not. Outside of a couple of songs, all of these tracks range from boring and generic to irritating to unintentionally hilarious. And a lot of that has to do with the two basic problems with Sam Smith. His writing's not all that good, and, believe it or not, his voice. The latter becomes an issue on these songs when he tries to express an emotion that doesn't really fit his vocal tone. Again, Too Good at Goodbyes, it's a great opening track, as it's an emotional tune that fits the mournful tone that Sam's voice automatically brings to his music. But then you get the utterly laughable One Last Song, where the more upbeat instrumental clashes horrifically with his voice. Of course, it doesn't help that the song itself is incredibly petty, a kiss-off to an ex that feels unjustified and mean-spirited for no reason. Or take Burning, which is basically one fire metaphor stretched out into an entire breakup song, looking at you, Alicia Keys. Another example of this is Say It First, where he's insisting that his lovers say that they love him before he says it to them. Which starts out charming, but as the song goes on, just feels pig-headed and exasperating. Or even on the other lead-off single, Pray, his over-the-top singing on that song is laughable. I can't take it remotely seriously, especially when he sings the word pray on the chorus. Now with that said, this album is redeemed by some overall good production and some good songs like Too Good at Goodbyes and Midnight Train. Even though I found it incredibly one-dimensional and basic, I can easily appreciate the song Him, where he comes to grips with his faith and his homosexuality. It's no Heaven by Troye Sivan, but it's decent, I'll give him that. But then again, this album as a whole is only decent at best, netting a solid 5 out of 10. If you've been a fan of Sam Smith in the past, you'll probably like this, so check it out. But personally, I'd recommend you just turn the radio back on and keep switching channels till you hear Too Good at Goodbyes. It's easily the best song this album has to offer.
All this living meant to be or a happy accident. Well, in my heart you pay no rent. Well, in my heart you pay no rent.
So at the beginning of this year, I was looking out for some country music, so I asked certain people online for recommendations as to who to look out for. And out of the many names I got, the Turnpike Troubadours were one of the names I didn't recognize. So when this new album dropped, I made a point to go back and listen to all of their past discography. And oh boy, if you want an example of a great and consistently solid country group, these guys definitely have my vote. And from the discussions that I've had with my fellow country fans since then, that generally seems to be accepted as a fact. People who know about these guys love them, and for damn good reason. They're not the kind of act that'll drop a classic whenever they feel like it, like Jason Isbell or Laurie McKenna, but at the same time, they've never made an album that wasn't damn good. Their basics are just so solid, with phenomenal and textured production, with pedal steel, harmonica, drums, strings, and guitars that really do work well for me. And I'm happy to announce that on this new album, they don't miss a beat. I'm not sure there's much of a narrative to this album, but there's definitely a running theme of looking back on life and growing maturity. From taking a look at old, fond memories like Sunday morning paper and pay no rent, to not quite being able to live the outlaw life anymore on songs like Pipe Bomb Dream and Winding Stair Mountain Blues, to thinking back to his days when he was quite a player on songs like Oklahoma Stars and Old Time Feeling Like Before. And really, my gripes with this album are extremely minor. I could point out that these themes feel a little one track, or the fact that some of these songs breeze by so quickly that the album can't help but feel a little short, but that just means that I'm enjoying it a lot. And considering the great songwriting and production all across this album, I can easily call this one of the most fun and easy listens I've had all year. Strong 8 out of 10, well done again, gentlemen. Again, I'm so grateful to those of you who turned me on to these guys, and as for the rest of you, definitely take the time to check them out. Because you definitely want to, starting with this album right here. And now for the polar opposite, here's an album that's no fun at all. Yeah, I'm not going to mince words here, Hollywood Undead is not a band that I have ever been a fan of. They're one of those bands that try to fuse metal and rock music with hip-hop, and I can already see most of you running for the hills. Good, you should, because they suck. So when I got several requests from some viewers and friends that I should review their newest album, 5, I was pretty sure what to expect going in. Namely, more of the same. And surprise, surprise, that's exactly what I got. These guys are basically the Scary Movie franchise of musical acts. I mean, just look at the album art. They are all terrible to varying degrees and are only ever unintentionally kind of funny. Like what sounds like a children's choir backing up the main hook on California Dreaming. And these compositions are basic as hell, all sounding incredibly fake and synthesized outside of a guitar line here and there. But that's nothing compared to the incredibly dumb lyrics we get from song to song. Like when Danny pulls out his gun so you can go bye-bye. Seriously, this album is full of moments like this. It's pandering to its teenage fan base to a ridiculous degree. And the fact that said fan base will lap this all up and take it seriously is just beyond me. It's honestly fairly depressing. Now, with all of that said, I can't say that it's their worst album. After making this type of music for so long, all of our performers can't help but improve a little, especially Danny Murillo's singing and Charlie Sheen's rapping. And I have heard worse on their other albums, I suppose, but that's not saying much. If they had an inch of self-awareness, I could at least appreciate this as a parody of some kind. But they and their fan base clearly take all of this way too seriously. So, light 4 out of 10. This album doesn't make me angry like some others that I've heard this year, and it's not their worst, but it's still awful and definitely deserving of the failing grade. Pass this one up if you know what's good for you.
I care for you, care for you. Care for you, care for you.
So now we have Björk, easily one of the most experimental, praised, and even polarizing figures in music. She really needs no further introduction, so instead I'm going to talk about my introduction to her music because it's honestly fairly recent. I heard her for the first time on her 2015 breakup album, Vulnicura, which thoroughly impressed me and made my list of the best albums of that year. And going through the rest of her discography, I can definitely say I'm a fan of hers. So when I heard that she was releasing this new album with an interesting theme, I was certainly intrigued. So what we get here is a beautiful album that's almost ambient in spots, which explores life in the wake of a breakup. Specifically, it goes through the process of recovery very early on, then mainly focuses on the next romance and what comes with it. This is pretty fascinating, diving into these emotions with the knowledge of what happened the last time she trusted them. On top of that, the way that she's diving into these new relationships through technology, as well as the overall exploration of the theme of Utopia, is definitely intriguing. And for an album diving into our technologically advanced society's idea of love, it certainly is beautifully organic. Not only are there strings and breathtaking flutes all across this album, but there are also samples of nature noises like birds tweeting on a lot of these songs. It's very relaxing. Now with that said, it does start to be an issue when you start drifting off to sleep while listening to this album. It's very beautiful and relaxing, but it's also very one-note and easy to lose yourself in, and not in the best way. As such, I wouldn't quite say it's up there with some of her best albums like Vulnicura or Vespertine, at least not for me. However, I will say that it is definitely potent as it's incredibly well composed, and it does ultimately accomplish what it set out to do, even if she could have given it a bit more weight, like say Perfume Genius did on No Shape earlier this year. So it's a 7 out of 10, give it a listen if you're a fan of hers, or if you just want something sweet and beautiful to play in the background.
Sitting here staring at the moon, thinking it'll be time soon, and I won't be in control. No.
And lastly, let's talk about the new album from Miguel. He's had a fair bit of success over the years, but in my opinion, never quite enough. And nowhere is that more clear than when he dropped his 2015 album, Wild Heart. That wasn't exactly a fantastic album, but it was definitely one of my summer jams of that year, with great songs like NWA, Waves, and especially Coffee, a song that very nearly made my top 50 songs of 2015. But while these all received some mainstream attention, none of them were hits, which I do find a little disappointing, not gonna lie. I mean, it was the same kind of cool, easy-to-love album that Bruno Mars's 24K Magic was last year. Nothing revolutionary, but just chill and laid back in a way that was naturally likable. So when I heard that he was following it up this year, I definitely wanted to give it some of my time, even if I wasn't wild about the lead-off singles leading up to it. And while I don't think that it's quite as solid overall as Wild Heart, I still think you can have some fun with this. It just comes with my own personal reservations this time round, meaning I'm definitely going to recommend this, but I'm now also going to proceed to take it apart for my own sadistic pleasure. So let's start with easily the most questionable track on this album, Criminal, which is definitely cool and funky in its sound, with the lyrical idea of being a criminal to this girl in bed. Cool, but some of these lines are a tad disturbing. I got a mind like Columbine, references to 9/11. We're not quite at the level of Lil Wayne saying, beat that pussy up like Emmett Till, but you don't want to be anywhere on that road, trust me. And it also doesn't help that the song also has a pretty bad Rick Ross verse tacked onto it. Come on, man, bring more of that swagger that you did on She on My Dick earlier this year. We all know you can do better than this. Luckily, the album does immediately improve with the next track, Pineapple Skies. A smooth beach jam where Miguel's voice rings out and screams, with touches of organic guitar that are definitely welcome next to that bass line. Which later happens again on Banana Clip, which felt like it was pulled straight from Wild Heart, which is definitely a good thing. Unfortunately, it doesn't work quite as well on Told You So, where the funky production really does clash with the more electronic beat. Luckily, the album does pick up steam again on Come Through and Chill, where J. Cole ends up dropping a pretty great verse over a nice guitar line. Although none of them work quite as well as Wolf, with the Western-inspired guitar line that sounded like it would have fitted quite nicely on Yellow Wolf's Trial by Fire, that pounding drum beat, and Miguel's wonderful and expressive howling all give the song a ton of character. So in the end, I would still recommend this. It's not quite as consistent as Wild Heart, but it takes the experimentation to the next level, with honestly very few songs that follow the R&B trends of 2017. So I'm giving this a light 7 out of 10, definitely give it a listen or two. Miguel is an artist who gets overlooked too often and by too many, and in my opinion, he deserves his chance to prove himself to you, so at least give him that. So that was it for today's record roundup. Leave a like if you enjoyed. All we have now is the record roundup finale, and then that'll be it. So again, if you still want something reviewed, now's your last chance. And remember, even if I don't review it in the video, I will give you my thoughts on the project in the comments down below. In the meantime, please subscribe so you don't miss a thing, and until the next time, I'm Finn, and this is the Social Tunes signing off.